What if I told you that the biggest mistake is believing life needs to have a fixed meaning? Alan Watts, one of the greatest thinkers of the 20th century, shows us that maybe the real secret isn't about finding answers, but about learning how to live in the present without fear. Today, we're going to explore Watts's philosophy and figure out together what to do when nothing seems to make sense anymore. When nothing seems to make sense anymore, it's natural to look for something solid to hold on to, a purpose, a certainty, a lasting sense of peace. But maybe our suffering comes from trying to hold on to what, by nature, can't be held. Alan Watts once said, "The only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance." In other words, meaning is found in motion, not in resistance. Impermanence isn't some flaw in the universe. It is the universe. Everything that is born changes. Everything that changes fades away. The problem starts when we try to freeze moments, emotions, people, even ourselves, as if anything could last forever in a world that's constantly shifting. This truth is at the heart of many great philosophies. Buddhism, for example, teaches that everything is anicca, impermanent. It's one of the three marks of existence. Pain comes from the illusion that things are fixed. We want pleasure to last, youth to stay, love to never change. But eventually, it all slips away. And when it does, we suffer. Not because of the change itself, but because we resist it. Watts invites us to flip the script. The real question isn't, how do I stop change from happening? But rather, how can I move with it? Imagine you're in a river. The water is rushing and you're grabbing at rocks, trying to stay still. But all that does is wear you down and pull you under. Now picture letting go. You float. You let the river carry you. That's not passivity. That's existential intelligence. It's learning how to dance with life. The philosopher Heraclitus, long before Watts, said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and he's not the same man." This quote hits deep because change isn't just around us, it's in us. We change, our thoughts, our values, our sense of self. But that doesn't have to be scary. It can be freeing. A lot of us feel guilty for not being who we once were. But what if that's natural? What if no longer having the same beliefs, dreams, or energy is simply a sign that we're alive? Maybe wisdom lies exactly there, in realizing that living well doesn't mean staying the same. It means learning to change consciously. Of course, accepting impermanence isn't easy. It means grief, letting go of comfortable illusions. But it also means growth. It means being fully present. When you know happy moments won't last, you learn to treasure them. When you know pain won't last either, you find the strength to endure it. Watts believed our obsession with control is what keeps us from peace. We try to predict, guarantee, lock things down, but that's fighting against the flow of reality. In one of his talks, he joked that life isn't a problem to be solved. It's an experience to be lived, like listening to music. You don't listen to a song just to get to the end. You listen to feel it, to be carried by its notes, its silences, its rhythm. That's how life should be. So how do we embrace impermanence in a practical way? It doesn't come from overthinking. It comes from a shift in how we relate to the world. First, practice mindfulness. When you focus on the present, just the present, you experience impermanence directly. You notice your thoughts come and go, sensations shift, your body breathes on its own. Your mind is like the sky. The clouds pass, but the sky stays. Second, practice conscious letting go. That doesn't mean giving up or not caring. It means loving without clinging. It means realizing that everything we have is borrowed. People, places, emotions. The more we try to hold tight, the more we lose. But when we let go, we're paradoxically freer to fully live the moment. Third, practice openness. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" during moments of change, try asking, "What can this teach me?" That one question shifts you from being a victim to being a learner, which might be the only honest role in a world that's always changing. And here's something even deeper. Impermanence connects us. Everyone feels loss. Everyone fears endings. That shared experience makes us more humble, more empathetic, more human. In the end, if everything changes, that also means no pain is permanent. No crisis lasts forever. Not even the feeling that nothing makes sense. It's just another wave in the ocean. Watts once said, "Trying to define yourself is like trying to bite your own teeth." It's pointless to chase a fixed identity, a permanent emotional state, or eternal certainty. That's not where peace lives. Peace lives in stopping the search for what doesn't exist. To accept impermanence is to stop fighting against the current of life, to realize we don't own life. We dance to its rhythm. And once we truly embrace that everything changes, something powerful happens. We stop being afraid. Impermanence doesn't have to be a source of pain. It can be the doorway to freedom. Man suffers only because he takes seriously what the gods made for fun. Alan Watts. At first glance, this quote might sound provocative or even reckless, but look a little closer. Watts isn't promoting indifference or carelessness. He's offering something freeing. What if human suffering comes in part from the illusion that life is a heavy mission, a serious test, a solemn obligation? We live as if we're constantly being judged, as if life were a never-ending exam, and we're always on the verge of failing. Racing against time, chasing validation, stacking up achievements, all with the pressure of getting there. But where exactly is there? Watts believed that the problem with modern life isn't a lack of purpose. It's too much existential seriousness. We take everything so seriously that we forget how to actually live. We forget how to play. And that goes deeper than it seems. In philosophy, the absurd is a core idea in the works of thinkers like Albert Camus. He described it as the clash between our need for meaning and the silent, indifferent universe. We want life to mean something, but the world doesn't give us clear answers. Faced with this, we have two choices: despair or dance. Camus chose to dance. He said that even with no guarantees, we should imagine Sisyphus happy, the man doomed to push a boulder uphill forever, only to watch it roll back down. Becoming aware of the absurd, strangely enough, can set us free. If there's no ultimate purpose being handed to us, then we're free to create our own game. And this is where Alan Watts connects with existential philosophy. What if life wasn't something to be figured out, but something to be danced with? Imagine watching a play. The actors get so deep into their roles, they forget they're performing. They start to believe the drama is real, the pain is endless, the tragedy is absolute. But the audience knows this is art. It's a performance, a way to play with life and to understand it through storytelling. Watts suggests that we are those actors. We're on the stage of existence, but we've forgotten it's a show. And more importantly, we've forgotten that we're also the writers of our parts, that we're free to interpret the script however we choose. Children understand this instinctively. They play, they pretend, they laugh at nonsense, and yet they're completely sincere in their games. Not silly, whole. But as we grow, we're taught that being an adult means being serious, to suffer, to stress, to harden. But is that really maturity, or just fear in disguise? Nietzsche, in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, said the free spirit goes through 3 stages. First, the camel, who carries the weight of rules. Then the lion, who rebels against it all. And finally, the child, the ultimate symbol of creation, lightness, and spontaneity. The child is the one who can laugh at the absurd, who can play with the unpredictable. And maybe, just maybe, true maturity begins when we learn how to play again. Taking life less seriously doesn't mean avoiding responsibilities. It means seeing clearly that things like work, status, success are just social games. And like any game, they only matter if we remember we're playing. It takes real courage to laugh when life feels like chaos. But maybe that's the deepest kind of wisdom. Watts said the secret of life is to fully engage with the present, but without clinging to the outcome. Like an artist who paints for the joy of it. Like a musician who plays for love of the melody, not the applause. And here's something important. Seriousness is often a disguise for fear. Fear of failing. Fear of not being enough. Fear of losing. So we tighten up. We try to control everything. We live tense and on guard. But what if we let go? Watts once said, "To have faith is to trust yourself to the water. When you swim, you don't grab hold of the water, because if you do, you'll sink. You have to relax and float." That's not recklessness. It's an invitation to lightness, to a more open, truthful life, one that's connected to what really matters, experience. And maybe this is one of life's most powerful lessons. You don't have to understand everything. You don't have to fix everything. You don't have to win every time. Sometimes, all life is asking of you is to join the dance. So now take a moment and reflect. Have you been taking life so seriously that you've forgotten how to live it? Have you been so hard on yourself that you've forgotten the joy of simply being? When everything around us starts falling apart and the meaning of life seems to vanish, a deep question quietly rises. Was it really me who lost meaning? Or was it just the idea I had of myself? Alan Watts invites us to look more closely at what we call the self. He says, "The ego is nothing other than the focus of conscious attention." In other words, what we call I is just a reference point, a temporary focus, not something solid, fixed, or independent. And that idea changes everything. From a young age, we're taught to believe we're separate from the world. You are you. The world is out there. Other people are not you. That sense of separation feels so obvious, so natural, that we rarely question it. But what if it's an illusion? Watts, influenced by Eastern traditions like Taoism, Zen Buddhism, and the Hindu philosophy of Vedanta, shows us that the ego, this feeling of being a separate self, is a mental and social construct, not a fundamental truth of reality. This idea also appears in the work of David Hume, an 18th century Scottish philosopher. When he tried to investigate the self, he found nothing but a stream of perceptions, emotions, and thoughts. There was no permanent me behind those experiences, just constant flow. So what are we? We are awareness in motion. We are part of something much larger. We're like waves in the ocean of existence. As Watts once said, "You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop." But why does this matter when life feels meaningless? Because often, the despair we feel doesn't come from the world itself, but from our desperate attempt to hold onto the image we've built of ourselves. When a relationship ends, when we lose our job, when certainty disappears, it's not just the outer world falling apart. It's the identity we built around those things that begins to collapse too. And that collapse hurts, because we think we are that self. But what if we're not? What if the collapse of the self is actually a chance to wake up? Watts suggests that the feeling of separation is the root of human suffering, because it convinces us we're alone, that we have to fight the world, that we need to prove ourselves, defend ourselves, win. All of this creates an endless inner war, a survival mode that never lets us rest. But what if there's no real border between who I am and what's around me? It's a bold question, even a bit unsettling. But think about it. Where exactly do you end and the world begin? If you stop and simply observe your direct experience, your thoughts, sensations, breathing, the sounds around you, you'll notice all of this is happening inside awareness. You don't control your thoughts. They just show up. You don't choose to breathe. Your body breathes on its own. You don't choose to hear sounds. They just appear. So, who's really in control? This is one of the biggest illusions we carry, the belief that there's a separate me in charge of everything, like a little pilot inside our head. But that pilot is never found, because it doesn't exist. This realization isn't a breakdown, it's a release. It's the end of needing to defend the ego, to prove anything to the world, to carry the weight of a fixed identity. Watts said that when this illusion dissolves, suffering dissolves with it, because we finally realize we're part of something much bigger, not as a belief, but as a lived experience. And this isn't only in Eastern philosophy. Even modern psychoanalysis echoes this idea. Freud saw the ego as a kind of middleman between unconscious impulses and outside reality. Lacan, more radical, said the self is just a fantasy built through language and mirrors. In other words, the idea of a fixed self is a construction, not a fact. And when that construction starts to fall apart, we don't need to panic. We can actually begin to see more clearly. When life seems to lose all meaning, maybe it's just the illusion of the separate self falling away. And that's a rare opportunity. Because when we realize we're not just this small, fragile, anxious, isolated self, we open up to a broader awareness. An awareness that doesn't need constant definitions. An awareness that watches without judgment. An awareness that belongs to everything. Watts loved using the metaphor of theatre. The ego, he said, is like the role of an actor. He steps on stage, plays his part, gets caught up in the drama, but deep down, he knows he's not the character. He's the actor, and going even deeper, he's the stage itself, the light, the awareness where everything unfolds. To live identified with the ego is to forget we're acting. It's to suffer as if the drama is all there is. But to live awake is to play with life, to feel pain when it comes, but without clinging to it as a definition of who you are. To love, to fail, to begin again, without the burden of a rigid identity. So when it feels like life has lost all meaning, maybe the invitation isn't to find a new version of yourself. Maybe the invitation is to let go of needing a fixed self at all. And then, something surprising happens. Life starts flowing again, because freedom doesn't come from finally figuring out who you are. It comes from realizing you're something that's always changing, always connected, always alive. We live as if life were a puzzle to be solved, every step calculated, every feeling monitored, every decision carefully planned. We've been taught that control equals safety, and safety means happiness. But what if the truth is the opposite? The more we struggle for life, as pleasure, the more we are actually killing what we love. Alan Watts. Watts challenges us to flip the script of Western thinking. Instead of trying to control life, we should learn to surrender to it. Not in the sense of giving up, but in conscious surrender. A state where we stop forcing the river and start flowing with the current. This tension between control and surrender is one of the core struggles of human existence. From childhood, we're taught to plan, predict, protect. We learn that not being in control is dangerous. But real life, not the idealized version, is uncertain, full of unexpected twists. And this is where anxiety begins. Our need for control crashes into the chaotic nature of life. And the more we try to grip the reins, the further we drift from peace. Watts saw this as a kind of modern neurosis, the illusion that with enough effort, we can control everything, even the unpredictable. But that mindset only fuels anxiety, because full control is impossible. And chasing it is like trying to grab the wind. Real wisdom is seeing that clearly. Watts said, "Muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone." When the mind is restless, when life feels tangled, our instinct is to interfere. Think more, do more, push harder. But sometimes, clarity comes not from effort, but from stillness, from space, from trust. Let go. Those two words may sound simple, even cliché, but they hold a whole universe. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It's not passive, it's emotional and spiritual intelligence. It's recognizing that there's a bigger current, something you can't control, but you can experience fully. this wisdom isn't new. Lao Tzu, in the Tao Te Ching, wrote over 2,000 years ago, "The wise man is like water, flexible, flowing, without resistance. That's why he wins. Water doesn't fight the rocks. It flows around them. It adapts. It doesn't force its way. It finds a way. And ironically, because it doesn't resist, it transforms everything it touches." So why is it so hard to surrender to the present moment? Because the present is unpredictable. And the ego, the part of us that builds walls and clings to identity, is terrified of what it can't control. It wants guarantees. It wants maps. It wants labels. But real life happens off the map. It keeps reinventing itself. When we try to control everything, we live in the future, trying to anticipate, or in the past, trying to fix. But we lose the now. Watts believed that being fully aware of the present is the freest state we can reach, not because it's always pleasant, but because it's real. Surrender doesn't mean whatever happens, happens. It means being so present that you don't have to fight it. You can feel it, live it, even hurt with it, without trying to escape. And in that space, something shifts. Pain, when welcomed, transforms. Doubt, when not fought, softens. Chaos, when not forced into order, reveals its own rhythm. But how do we actually do this? The first step is noticing the mind trying to control everything. Do you worry all the time? Always imagining worst-case scenarios? Trying to predict how people will act? Creating mental strategies to protect your feelings? Those are all signs the ego is in control mode, and the practice, while simple, runs deep. Breathe. Feel your body. Feel this moment. Watts compared life to swimming. If you try to grab the water, you sink. But if you relax and trust, you float. That trust is the heart of surrender. And it's not blind. It's a higher form of intelligence. It knows we don't have to solve everything right now. We can't control the wind, but we can adjust our sails. Many times, life feels meaningless because we're forcing it to make sense. Like someone squinting to see in the dark. It only makes the darkness worse. But when we relax, our eyes adjust. Surrender isn't weakness. It's strength without stiffness, clarity without arrogance. It's the wisdom of knowing there's a time to act and a time to simply be. In a world that worships productivity, performance, and control, learning to surrender is almost an act of rebellion. It's saying, I trust life, even when I don't understand it. It's saying, I can rest, even with unfinished business. It's saying, I don't need to prove myself, I just need to live. And the strange thing is, once we let go, things start to fall into place. Not because magic happens, but because our minds stop getting in the way. And then the answers come. Decisions feel lighter. Problems sort themselves out with greater clarity. So if you're tired of trying to control everything, maybe it's time to hear Watts' gentle invitation. Let go. Trust. You're already being carried. We live as if life were a race. A straight line with a starting point, obstacles along the way, and a finish line. Success, the ideal love, career achievement, spiritual enlightenment. We spend our days running, and the years fly by like that too. But Alan Watts invites us to pause, take a breath, and ask a question that could change everything. What if life isn't a race, but a song? Life is not a journey with a destination. It's more like a musical thing, and you were supposed to sing or to dance while the music was being played. Alan Watts. That thought is both freeing and unsettling, because it pulls us out of achievement mode, that constant drive to get somewhere, and drops us into presence, where each moment is already complete in itself. Think about how you listen to music. You don't listen to a song just waiting for it to end. You don't ask, what's the point of this music? You listen to feel it, to get lost in the sound, the rhythm, the pauses. The joy is in the melody, not the final note. And yet, when it comes to life, we do the exact opposite. We live for the ending. For the when I get there, when I become someone, when I figure it all out. But maybe that constant search for a final meaning is exactly what keeps us from experiencing life now. It's like running through a forest with your eyes locked on a faraway point and missing the trees, the birds, the wind. That obsession with meaning can turn into a kind of blindness. Worse, a prison. Because the meaning we're chasing almost never arrives. Or if it does, it rarely brings the relief we hoped for. So we chase the next thing. And the next. And the next. Watts used to mock this mindset, saying we spend our lives trying to get there, as if there's some place more real than here. This idea echoes in the philosophy of Jean-Paul Sartre, who said that humans are condemned to create meaning. That's freedom, sure, but it's also a heavy burden, because life doesn't come with a script. But maybe that's not a flaw. Maybe it's an invitation. The song of life doesn't need to be solved. It's meant to be danced. Watts loved the metaphor of dance. When you dance, you don't dance to arrive somewhere. You dance because dancing is the whole point. You move, feel, mess up, laugh, get lost, and it's all part of it. But we live as if we're dancing while checking the time, as if life's value only exists at the finish line. The diploma, the wedding, the job title, the retirement, peace after death. But those are just final notes in a melody that may have been ignored while it was playing. So it makes you wonder, are we truly alive? Or just trying to justify being alive? That question isn't just poetic, it's existential. Because when we treat life as a means to an end, we turn it into a product. But when we live it like music, we realize there's nothing to achieve, only to experience. That doesn't mean we shouldn't have goals or dreams. It's just a reminder not to put off life in the name of chasing them. Life doesn't start after success, or after healing, or after answers. It's happening right now, as you breathe, read, feel. And once we realize that, something deep shifts. We stop demanding that life makes sense, and start seeing that life is the sense, just like we don't ask the purpose of a flower, a sunset, or a real laugh. Maybe we don't need to ask for the purpose of life either, because life itself is the dance. That awareness is a form of wisdom and of humility. It teaches us that we don't need to control, explain, or figure everything out to fully take part in the experience of being alive. In Zen Buddhism, this is called shikantaza, just sitting, or fi. It's a mindfulness practice that reminds us the present doesn't have to be a means to anything. It is the end. It's the music playing, and you're both the listener and the instrument. Of course, living this way isn't easy. The world demands efficiency, results, productivity. But deep down, what we're all looking for is the same thing: the peace of simply being present, in harmony with what is. And maybe that peace begins when we stop running and start listening to the music, not with our ears, but with our hearts, with our bodies, with our souls. Maybe the dance of life is imperfect, messy, full of stumbles, but it's real, and every step, even the uncertain ones, holds beauty. So today, try this. Don't think so much about what's next. Feel this moment. Take a deep breath. Let the present be enough, just as it is. The music of life is playing. Are you listening? In a noisy, hectic, and anxious world, the idea of quieting the mind can feel strange, even uncomfortable. After all, we've been trained to think all the time, to solve, plan, remember, and anticipate. But Alan Watts offers a powerful paradox. What if this constant mental noise is exactly what keeps us from seeing reality as it truly is? To Watts, meditation isn't about escaping or chasing some mystical enlightenment. It's about returning, coming back to the now, a way to see things clearly. He once said, "Muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone." A restless mind is like murky water. The more you try to clean it forcefully, the more mud you stir up. But if you just let it be, it settles, and then you can see the bottom. That's what happens in meditation. But don't be fooled. Meditation isn't about stopping your thoughts. It's about not identifying with them. It's about watching, without judgment. It's realizing that thoughts come and go like clouds in the sky. But you are not the clouds. You are the sky. That shift is subtle, but transformative. Watts often pointed out that we're so caught up in our thoughts that we start believing we are our thoughts. But we're more than that. We're the space in which thoughts appear, the awareness behind it all. And once you see it that way, your relationship with life changes. Suddenly, emotions stop feeling like monsters and start looking like temporary visitors. Anxiety stops being chaos and becomes a sensation in the body, a story in the mind, and above all, we start noticing a simple truth. The present moment is usually calmer than our mind makes it seem. Watts saw meditation as a radical way to reconnect with the present. He said, "No valid plans for the future can be made by those who have no capacity for living now." In other words, you can only move forward with clarity when you're grounded in the present. And you can only reach the present when you turn down the volume of the constant, "What if? Why me? When will this end?" Meditation is like opening the windows of a stuffy room. The air is already out there. The light is out there. It always was. But you need to make space for it to come in. So how do you do that? Watts, influenced by Zen Buddhism and Taoist philosophy, was against rigid or obsessive forms of meditation. For him, meditation wasn't a technique, it was a mindset. It didn't require perfect posture, a stopwatch, or a mind free of thoughts. It only required presence. Sit, or lie down, or walk, breathe, observe, feel your body, listen to the sounds around you, watch your thoughts go by, like watching a movie, and slowly something begins to shift. The mind stops being the center of everything. You reconnect with your body. The world stops being just a concept and becomes a direct experience again. That's the point. Meditation doesn't take you somewhere else. It brings you back to the only place life actually happens, here. It's common to look to meditation for instant relief, a quick fix, a magical solution. But Watts reminded us, meditation isn't about reaching some future state. It's about realizing that this moment, right now, is already enough, even with the noise, even with the discomfort. And that's not giving up, that's spiritual maturity. It's the moment when you stop running, stop trying to control, and just observe. And when you observe, you start seeing things as they are. And when you see clearly, you act wisely, not out of fear, not out of need, but from a place of direct awareness. Watts also warned, trying to get rid of your ego is the biggest ego trip of all. In other words, even using meditation to improve yourself can be another trick of the ego. Meditation isn't about self-improvement, it's about resting from that entire project. It's about stopping the effort to become something and just being. And in that raw, unguarded present state, you find what you were chasing in goals, books, and gurus. Peace. Not an ecstatic peace, but a quiet one. A peace that doesn't come from the outside. That doesn't depend on anything. The clarity that comes from meditation doesn't answer every question, but it dissolves many of them. Because much of our suffering doesn't come from life itself, but from our mind constantly trying to control it. When you meditate, even for a few minutes, you create space between you and the noise. And in that space, you realize, I am not my thoughts. I am not my emotions. I am the awareness that observes them. And that simple realization changes everything. Not because the world outside has changed, but because you stopped confusing yourself with it. So next time your mind is on fire, full of questions, fears, and pressure, try not answering. Sit. Be still. Breathe. See what happens when you stop doing and just observe. Maybe, in that silence, you'll find what no thought ever gave you. Clarity. In a universe where everything is temporary, control is an illusion, and meaning is slippery, what's left for us? For many, the answer is despair, anxiety, a desperate search for something solid to hold on to. But Alan Watts offers us a different path, one that's surprising, light, and deeply transformative: humor. This is the real secret of life, to be completely engaged with what you are doing in the here and now. Whoa. That line from Watts sums up an ancient wisdom. When you're truly present, you stop demanding that life explain itself. You just live, you play, and yes, you laugh. But laugh at what? Laugh at the absurdity, laugh at the ego, laugh at your own illusions. Not to mock life, but to humbly recognize that life was never as serious as our minds made it out to be. Watts saw the universe as a kind of cosmic comedy, not a silly one, but a grand performance where the whole me versus the world thing is the ultimate joke. He said we take everything way too seriously, especially ourselves. And that seriousness is often what keeps us from seeing the beauty right in the middle of the chaos. And he wasn't alone in that thought. Søren Kierkegaard, often seen as the father of existentialism, once said that humor is the highest stage of life before faith. In other words, the ability to laugh at yourself, at life, at contradictions, brings you closer to inner freedom than constantly living tense, stiff, and stuck in logic. Why? Because humor creates distance. You can only laugh at something once you've stepped back from it. And that's the key. When we can laugh at the absurdity of life, it's a sign we're no longer trapped by it. Picture this. You're stuck in traffic, running late, totally stressed, honking like it's going to change anything. Your mind is spinning with blame, frustration, panic. But suddenly, something in you catches the ridiculousness of it all, and you laugh. Not because the problem disappeared, but because you stopped being completely identified with it. That kind of laughter is a form of wisdom. Watts used to say the ego is the biggest joke, and we just take it way too seriously. We create a version of ourselves that needs validation, needs to succeed, and we fight like crazy to maintain that image. But then something happens, a failure, a loss, an unexpected twist. And for a moment we realize, wait, maybe this is all just a game. And what do we do with a game? We play it. Not out of duty, but for the fun of it. Not to win at life, but to be part of it with joy and lightness. Humor, in that sense, becomes a form of enlightenment. It doesn't deny pain. It changes how we relate to it. Nietzsche, in his quest for a life-affirming philosophy, once said we should only take a thought seriously if it can survive laughter. To him, laughing in the face of tragedy was a sign of strength, of maturity, of embracing life exactly as it is, without needing to escape it. So laughter becomes a doorway. When we can laugh at ourselves, at our fears, at our anxiety, at our constant need to have everything make sense, we realize life never promised logic. It promised movement, and within that messy movement, full of contradictions, we sometimes find moments of clarity, not the intellectual kind, but the kind that sees beauty in the absurd. Humor also heals. It softens our expectations. It knocks us off our high horse. It brings us closer to others. Because laughing at life means admitting we're all in the same boat. We're born without asking, spend life trying to make sense of it, and die taking none of it with us. But we also share the same comedy. We fall in love. We trip. We get fooled. We start over. We cry over a song, or smile at the smell of coffee in the morning. This cosmic comedy, the mix of the profound and the ridiculous, is the stage we all share. And once we accept that, we stop waiting for life to hand us a script. We start to improvise, to play, to dance. Watts used to say that enlightenment isn't some solemn, untouchable state. It's a quiet laugh that rises when you finally realize that nothing needs to make sense to be fully lived. And maybe that's the secret. Life doesn't need to be explained. It needs to be experienced, and whenever possible, laughed at. We live chasing guarantees that we'll be loved, that we won't lose what we've built, that we'll be safe tomorrow. We want stability, predictability, permanence. But Alan Watts offers a wake-up call. What if the security we fight so hard for simply doesn't exist? The desire for security and the feeling of insecurity are the same thing. To hold your breath is to lose your breath. Alan Watts. This quote hits a hard truth. The search for security doesn't remove fear. It is fear dressed up as a strategy. We're so used to chasing stability that we don't even realize how it traps us. We overwork ourselves trying to secure a future that never really arrives. We stay in relationships out of fear of being alone. We accumulate, we plan, we try to control everything. But deep down, we're still anxious. Why? Because, as Watts says, security is an illusion created by the ego, a trick of the mind trying to find solid ground in a world that's constantly shifting. Life is fluid by nature. Nothing stays the same. Our bodies age. Emotions shift. People come and go. Reality doesn't offer guarantees. And the more we demand certainty from an uncertain world, the more anxiety we create. It's like trying to hold the ocean still with your hands. Not only is it pointless, it's exhausting. So Watts invites us to do something radical. Let go of the obsession with safety. Not in a careless way, but as a path to inner freedom. This may sound extreme, even risky. After all, in an unpredictable world, isn't it normal to want some stability? Sure, it's understandable. But the deeper issue isn't wanting comfort. It's needing it in order to function. It's tying our peace of mind to things outside of us being predictable. And that makes us prisoners of a world that never stops changing. Watts points out that, at the root, the desire for security is really the desire to control life. We want to know what's coming. We want to be sure that things will work out. But the truth is, no one knows what'll happen 5 minutes from now. And not knowing doesn't have to be terrifying. It can be an invitation to be more present, more flexible, more alive. In existential philosophy, especially in thinkers like Heidegger and Sartre, the same idea shows up. We are thrown into a world without guarantees or final answers. But it's from this shaky ground that true freedom is born. Freedom to create meaning. Freedom to live without needing to control the unknown. Watts said, real spiritual awakening isn't about finding an inner safety zone. It's about realizing that life is inherently risky and still choosing to show up for it. Surrendering to uncertainty isn't giving up. It's courage. The courage to live without a safety net. To love even knowing we might lose. To act without any promise of success. To be even without fully knowing what that means. And here's the twist. When we stop obsessing over security, something surprising happens. Our anxiety starts to fade. Why? Because anxiety comes from the gap between our need for control and a reality we can't control. When we stop clinging to control, that tension disappears, and in its place, something new appears. Acceptance, trust, not blind trust that everything will be fine, but a mature trust that says, whatever happens, I'll handle it. Watts once used a powerful analogy. Trying to build total security in life is like building a castle on waves. No matter how hard you try, the castle will collapse. But if you accept the ocean as it is, you can learn to surf. And surfers don't demand the sea to stay calm. They move with it. Letting go of the need for guarantees is an inner revolution. It's a shift from trying to control life to becoming a participant in its flow. It brings us back to a deeper kind of trust, the trust that we don't have to know everything to live fully. And it's amazing how many spiritual traditions agree on this. In Taoism, for example, there's Wu Wei, acting without force, flowing with the Tao, the natural way of things. In Zen Buddhism, enlightenment doesn't come from gaining something, but from letting go of everything. In Christian mysticism, there's the idea of surrendering to divine providence, not as weakness, but as an act of love toward the mystery of life. Watts knew this surrender isn't easy. It's a process. But he also knew that, on the other side of it, there's something that the pursuit of security can never give us. Freedom. A freedom that doesn't depend on your bank account, your job, or anyone's approval. A freedom that comes from within. From someone who's learned to trust not in control, but in their ability to live without control. So what's left when we stop chasing guarantees and certainty? What's left is the present moment, the lightness of no longer needing to protect ourselves from everything, the peace of no longer fighting reality. What's left is life just as it is, unstable, changing, unpredictable, and still incredibly beautiful. Alan Watts, deeply inspired by the Tao Te Ching, used to say that living in conflict with reality is like paddling against the current. You can try, sure, you can pour all your energy into resisting the flow, but eventually you'll get tired, and you'll realize that life moves on, whether you like it or not. The wisdom of the Tao invites us to drop the oars. But what if letting go isn't weakness, but a form of wisdom? What kind of meaning shows up when we stop fighting what is? To understand that question, we first have to face an uncomfortable truth. We spend much of our lives trying to force reality to match our expectations. We want people to love us in the exact way we imagined. We want our jobs to always be stable. We want our bodies to follow our timing. We want the world to bend to our ideas of how things should be. But the Tao, the way, doesn't work like that. The Tao doesn't follow orders. It flows. And resisting that flow is resisting the very nature of life. Watts believed that mental rigidity is one of the biggest sources of modern suffering. We try to live like machines, with full control, linear plans, and absolute guarantees. But life isn't linear. It pulses, it shifts, it turns. And when we fight that, we get dragged, not by life itself, but by our own inner resistance. The Tao Te Ching, by Lao Tzu, says, "Nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished." That's one of the deepest lessons in Taoist philosophy. Life organizes itself without effort. The river finds its path. The tree grows at its own pace. A child learns to walk without understanding the mechanics of muscles. But us, we live tense, always trying to anticipate the next step, fix every problem, control every emotion. But when we let go, something shifts. Stopping the fight against reality doesn't mean giving up or accepting injustice. It means recognizing that everything has a natural rhythm, and resisting that rhythm brings pain. Watts often used the metaphor of dancing. You don't dance by trying to guess the next move. You feel it. You go with it. You respond to the beat, the space, your partner. Trying to control the dance is how you lose the dance. Life works the same way. The Tao teaches us to be like water. Water is fluid, soft, and yielding. But it can wear down rock, which is rigid and unbending. Watts would repeat this often, showing that true strength isn't about being hard, but being adaptable. Rigidity breaks. Flexibility survives. And when you really understand this, the meaning of life stops being an abstract philosophical puzzle and becomes an invitation to presence, because the Tao can only be lived now. You can't enter the flow tomorrow. You can't flow with what might be. You can only flow with what is, with what's right in front of you, this very moment. So why do we resist so much? Because we've been trained to. We were taught that giving in means weakness, that letting go of control is losing, that going with the flow makes you a victim of fate. But the Tao isn't blind fate. It's natural wisdom. It's recognizing there's a greater movement happening, and swimming against it is ignoring the intelligence of the universe. Watts invites us to ask, what if the pain we feel in chaotic times isn't from the chaos itself, but from our effort to force order where it doesn't fit? What if fear doesn't come from change, but from our resistance to change? That shift in mindset changes everything. Anxiety loses its grip when you realize you don't have to control everything. Anger softens when you understand others are struggling with their own flow too. Guilt fades when you accept that learning to live means making mistakes. And that's part of the Tao. Living in harmony with the Tao means letting go of the fight to be someone. It means just being, allowing yourself to exist without needing to prove, perform, or perfect. And surprisingly, when you stop forcing things, life begins to flow more easily. Decisions become clearer. Relationships feel more honest. Your body relaxes. Your mind quiets. Because you've finally stopped paddling upstream. Of course, that doesn't mean life will be easy. Sometimes the current is strong. Sometimes it hurts. But there's a huge difference between moving with the current and fighting against it. That's the wisdom of the Tao. Don't fight life. Learn from it. Listen to the signs. Feel the seasons. Be open to changing course when the path calls for it. Not because you gave up, but because you woke up. Watts once said, "Trying to define yourself is like trying to bite your own teeth." It's pointless to try to freeze life, or yourself, into one fixed identity, because everything is changing. And when you accept that change, when you dance with it, a quiet kind of peace starts to show up. Not as a clear answer, but as a deep knowing. The peace of someone who no longer has to fight reality. When everything feels meaningless, our first instinct is to fix it. We want to solve the emptiness, fill the silence, find the direction we think we've lost. But Alan Watts offers a radically different, and maybe more truthful, approach. What if the very urge to fix life is part of the problem? To try to control the mind is like trying to control the wind. Alan Watts. This isn't just about meditation. It's about how we exist. Watts noticed that modern humans are constantly trying to fix themselves, fix their emotions, fix their thoughts, fix their past, fix their future, as if life were some broken object and the absence of meaning a defect that needs to be repaired. But what if the emptiness isn't a flaw? What if it's actually a doorway to a more honest experience of life, rawer, quieter, less shaped by expectations, and more connected to what simply is? We've been taught to believe that life must have a clear, permanent meaning, something we can explain to others. But as Watts points out, the real world doesn't work that way. It's full of movement, uncertainty, and cycles, including times when meaning vanishes. And that's not a mistake. It's an essential part of the journey. The urge to fix the lost meaning comes from fear of drifting, fear of losing control, fear of looking in the mirror and not recognizing who we are. But maybe that moment of loss is actually an invitation to let go of the old map and explore a new way of living. Watts said the problem with the meaning of life is that we treat life as if it owes us something, like it's a machine that should be working correctly. But life isn't a puzzle to be solved. It's a dance to be danced, a river to be floated, a mystery to be lived. And mysteries aren't solved, they're experienced. When we try to fill the void with easy answers, distractions, forced goals, or shallow spiritual talk, we're just pouring concrete over fertile ground. But what grows when we have the courage to stay in the emptiness, without rushing to escape? Listening begins. Silence opens up. We realize that not knowing might be the beginning of wisdom. The philosopher Martin Heidegger said real thinking only begins when our certainties are shaken. And it's often in that shake-up that the emptiness shows up. But instead of destroying us, it can transform us. It can lead us to a more grounded way of being, one that's less conditioned, more open to what's real. Watts saw this as a rare opportunity, the chance to stop projecting meaning onto life and start noticing life itself. No filters, no theories, no expectations. Because when meaning falls apart, what's left? The wind, the breath, the taste of tea, the now. And the now, as simple as it seems, is more real than any idea about what life should be. At this point, Watt's philosophy aligns closely with Zen Buddhism, which teaches that enlightenment isn't about reaching a special state, but about clearly seeing what's already here. The sound of traffic, the ache in your back, the boredom of a long afternoon, the joy that shows up for no reason at all. All of it is part of life's dance, and it can be fully experienced without needing to make sense. Watts used to say that the universe is like a play, and sometimes the point of the play is simply to be performed. There's no moral at the end, no secret lesson. The beauty is in being part of it, in living each scene, even the confusing ones, even the quiet ones. So when it feels like meaning is lost, maybe the wisest thing isn't to chase it, but to pause and see what shows up in the space it left behind. That space is sacred, because it's where the armor falls off. It's where social roles lose their grip. It's where we can, maybe for the first time in a long while, breathe without pretending. And what emerges there might not be a new meaning in the way we expected, but a more real relationship with life, more sensitive, more honest, more present. When we stop trying to fix life, we finally start to hear it. And in that listening, a quiet wisdom can reveal itself. That just being alive is already enough. The emptiness stops being a hole to fill and becomes space for something new to grow. Not something planned, not something controlled, but something true. A meaning that doesn't come from the mind, but from being fully in the now. And this kind of meaning doesn't need to be explained. You just feel it. In a world that's getting faster, louder, and more overwhelming, Alan Watts invites us to look in the opposite direction, towards simplicity, not the kind you see in aesthetics or trendy minimalism, but a simplicity rooted in presence, in finding wonder in the ordinary. He believed the meaning of life isn't hidden in big achievements, deep philosophy, or spiritual breakthroughs. It's in the breeze on your skin, in the taste of warm tea, in the sound of an honest laugh. And that can be unsettling for many, because we've been taught that meaning must be something grand, complicated, and rare. But what if we're walking right past it? This is the real secret of life, to be completely engaged with what you are doing in the here and now. Alan Watts. That kind of presence, pure attention to the moment, is the heart of simplicity. It's not about having less. It's about being fully here. When we return to simplicity, we're not going backward. We're going deeper. It's not shallow. It might be the deepest thing we can do. Because the truth is, a lot of our mental and emotional complexity is just distraction. We use it to fill space, justify ourselves, or avoid what's here. But simplicity brings us back down, back to the body, to the moment, to the sound of rain on the roof, to the smell of coffee in the morning, to the quiet of not needing to prove anything. Watts saw simplicity as an antidote to modern anxiety, not because it solves everything, but because it shifts the focus. It pulls us out of the constant "what's next" and brings us into "what's now." And suddenly, the world feels magical again. Simplicity doesn't explain, it just is. The problem is, we've been raised to value the complicated. Big words, complex systems, overthinking everything. But wonder doesn't need sophistication. It needs presence. Watts said a child's laugh holds more wisdom than many philosophical essays. Because it's real. It's spontaneous. It's not searching for meaning. It's just living. And maybe that's true wisdom. Stop trying to figure life out like a formula and start feeling it like a poem. Zen philosophy teaches something similar. Monks don't search for deep intellectual answers. They sweep the floor, drink tea, watch the clouds, sit in silence, and in the middle of that, something is revealed. The sacred hidden in the simple. Watts saw this approach as a way to feel whole again. He believed a complex mind is always divided, always comparing, striving, fixing. But simplicity is whole. It's not trying to get anywhere. It's already where life is happening, here. So why do we lose the ability to be amazed by simple things? Because our culture taught us that happiness is always somewhere else, that life is only worth it if it's extraordinary, that now is just a stepping stone to later. But simplicity doesn't have a later. It's now, just as it is. No rush, no need to impress. And here's the key. Wonder lives in the now. When you're fully present, even the smallest moment has depth. The taste of a fruit, the sound of a word, the feel of your feet on the ground, the sparkle in someone's eyes. None of that needs an explanation. It just needs space and silence and attention. That's what simplicity offers. A return to the beauty that was always there. We just forgot how to see it. Watts saw this return as a kind of healing. Because when we stop demanding that life always be extraordinary, we finally give ourselves permission to rest from comparison, from constant effort, from the pressure of ego. And in that rest, life touches us. It's like we feel things again for the first time, not needing to label, control, or change anything. But be careful. Simplicity is not the same as shallowness. It's not running away. It's depth without complication. It's like the poet Fernando Pessoa once said, "Everything is worthwhile if the soul is not small." In other words, even the simplest things can carry meaning if we show up fully. So ask yourself, why are we always chasing complicated answers when life is already speaking to us through the little things? Maybe because we're afraid of the emptiness, and simplicity, being quiet, forces us to face that. But if we accept the silence, it becomes presence. And presence might be the only place where life really happens. So yes, simplicity might just be the way back to wonder. Not the wonder of fantasy, but of reality. The touch, the moment, the being here. Watts believed the meaning of life doesn't need to be found. It can be felt. In your breath, in washing your hands, in a talk with a friend, in the taste of a meal made with care. It's not about what's happening. It's about how you're with what's happening. And that's the key to simplicity. You are the universe experiencing itself. Alan Watts. What if this thing we call life isn't a series of problems to be solved, but a show to be lived? What if the crisis of meaning that sometimes paralyzes us isn't a flaw in the script, but a crucial part of the play? Alan Watts invites us to shift our perspective in a way that can change everything. For him, life isn't a serious journey with a final destination. It's more like a theatrical performance, or better yet, a cosmic theatre, where we laugh, cry, forget who we are, and then, slowly, begin to remember. And like any good play, life has its dramatic scenes. That's where the crisis of meaning often shows up. But what if that crisis is the moment when the character begins to wake up? Picture yourself on stage. For a long time, you're so into your role that you forget you're acting. You suffer, love, lose, fight, succeed. But then something happens. A pause, a silence, a break in the script. And in that space, a question rises. Who is actually living all this? Who am I, beyond this role? That's the crisis. And it's also the beginning of something new. Watts saw the ego, this me we create to get by in the world, as a character, a mask, a persona we put on, like actors on a stage, to play the game of life. But somewhere along the way, we forget it's a performance. We start believing we are the role. But no one is born with a ready-made script. What happens is that, over time, we absorb lines, beliefs, and expectations from our parents, society, culture. We build a narrative, and eventually, that narrative falls apart. That's not failure. That's the moment the actor steps back from the scene. The moment you realize that maybe everything you called real life is actually a story, a necessary drama, but not the full truth. Watts said the universe expresses itself through us, that the awareness inside you is the same one burning in the stars, and that somehow this awareness chose to forget itself, just to experience life as a game, a show. So the crisis of meaning might actually be a turning point in the play. The moment when the character starts to suspect there's more beneath the surface. It's the beginning of awakening. Instead of rushing to fix the crisis, Watts suggests something different. Feel it. Live it. Watch that scene with full attention, because that's often when life shows its true depth. In theatre, the most powerful moments aren't always the easiest ones. They're the scenes where the character gets broken, challenged, changed. And the same is true for us. The pain that comes with a crisis of meaning is real, but it might also be an invitation to look beyond the story, to realize you're not just the actor, you're also the stage, the backdrop, the lighting, the silence between the lines. You're the awareness behind the performance. When we see life as a play, we begin to live it with more lightness and more depth. Not because we stop feeling, but because we learn to witness. We laugh at ourselves. We cry without shame. We feel the tragic beauty of every act, and we accept that sometimes there's no clear explanation, just the experience. Shakespeare said it best: all the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. Watts took that image and expanded it. If life is a play, then chasing after some final, ultimate meaning might be like an actor stepping off stage to find the truth behind the scene, when in fact, the truth is in the act of performing. The meaning isn't outside the play, it's in how you live it, with presence, with surrender, with courage. And when you accept the role you're in, even if you don't know all the lines, something shifts. You reconnect with the mystery of being alive, with the fact that you are the universe, for a brief moment, acting itself out. So the crisis of meaning becomes part of the script, a turning point, a pause between acts. The moment you breathe and realize, I don't know exactly who I am, but I'm here, and that's enough. You don't have to leave the stage. You don't have to rewrite the whole play. Just remember, you're playing a role, and that gives you freedom. Freedom to change your tone, to improvise, to laugh, to go silent, and most of all, to realize that life doesn't always need to make sense. It needs to be felt. Like a great play, you sometimes only understand it after the lights go out. Searching for meaning is one of the deepest traits of being human. Ever since we became self-aware, we've asked, why? Why are we here? Why do things happen? What's the purpose of all this? But Alan Watts offers a surprising thought. What if the search for meaning itself is exactly what keeps us from truly living? The meaning of life is just to be alive. It is so plain and so obvious and so simple. And yet, everybody rushes around in a great panic as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. Alan Watts. That's the contradiction, or better yet, the paradox of seeking meaning. We want to understand life before we live it. We want certainty before we take the leap. But in doing that, we miss the very experience that might reveal, in real, simple, human terms, what we're actually looking for. The obsession with finding a fixed, unshakable, ultimate meaning can become an invisible cage, a constant hunger for explanations, for guarantees, for a why that will protect us from feeling lost. But what if feeling lost isn't the enemy? Watts said that when we get caught up in the chase for meaning, we miss something obvious. Life is already happening, right now. And maybe the issue isn't the lack of meaning, but our demand that it appear on our terms. That demand creates anxiety. We want life to make sense like a neat story. But life isn't a thesis. It's a river. It's a poem. It's a dance where you don't always know the steps, but where what matters is the movement. The obsession with ultimate meaning is often a hidden form of fear. Fear of being lost. Fear of wasting your life. Fear that maybe none of it matters. But what does matter even mean? Who decides that? When we look at nature, We don't see trees having existential crises. We don't see birds justifying their existence. We don't see rivers anxious to know their final destination. And still, there's beauty, there's rhythm, there's flow. Maybe our suffering comes from this uniquely human ability to leave the present and live inside our thoughts. And among all our thoughts, one of the most dangerous might be, life is only worth living if it has a higher meaning. But what if just living is the meaning? That question might sound empty to someone in deep pain. And that's okay. That's human. It's real to want your suffering to mean something, especially in times of loss, illness, heartbreak, or crisis. And as Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, once said, meaning isn't invented, it's discovered. And often, it's not some big spiritual breakthrough. Sometimes it's something simple and small, a kind gesture, a view that makes you stop and breathe, a moment of quiet where, just for a second, everything feels like it belongs. Watts goes even further. He suggests that the constant need to find meaning can be a distraction, a way the mind avoids being here, now, because the present is raw, it's unfiltered, it's real, and often, it doesn't give you big answers, but it gives you something better, experience. Watts invites us to flip the question. Instead of searching for the meaning of life, live in a way that gives life meaning, not because you figured it out, but because you're truly living it, with presence, with courage, with openness. Life may never give us a one-size-fits-all answer, but it can be meaningful in the smallest of ways, in how you listen to someone, in how you take a deep breath, in how you show up for your pain without running from it. These moments may be small, but they're real, and maybe that's enough. The problem is, the mind always wants more. It wants conclusions. It wants a clear storyline. It wants safety from uncertainty. But the heart knows the deepest meaning shows up when we stop trying so hard to force it. It's like sleep. The more you try to make it happen, the more it slips away. But when you relax, it comes. Same with meaning. It's not something you grab. It's something that shows up when you're truly present in the life you have, not in the one you're hoping for. Watts reminds us, life doesn't need to be justified. It just is, and that's more than enough. Accepting this doesn't mean giving up on meaning. It means letting go of the obsession. It means being okay with not having all the answers. It means laughing at the mystery, walking without a map, trusting your steps more than the destination. And that's often when meaning begins to appear, not as a final answer, but as a quiet presence, living in every real, honest moment you allow yourself to feel. If you've made it this far, take a deep breath. It means something in this message spoke to you. And for that, thank you. Thank you for allowing this moment of pause, of reflection, of presence. If this content touched you in any way, I'd like to invite you to keep going on this journey with me. Subscribe to the channel so we can keep exploring these questions together. They don't always have clear answers, but they often change the way we experience life. Leave a like. It shows that this kind of content matters and helps spread the message to others who might need to hear it. Drop a comment below. I want to know what stuck with you. What idea made you think? What part would you share in a conversation with someone close to you? Share this video with someone. Sometimes, a single new perspective on life can change everything. And of course, stick around. There's a lot more content on the channel waiting for you. Each video is a new invitation to awareness, inner freedom, and the simple beauty of being alive. I'll see you in the next video, and until then, live with presence, live with lightness, live with truth.